retentiveness. And I remember noticing that the kids who held on to their money just always had money. Like that's it. And it made sense, right? It's very basic. It's like, well, because they're not giving their money away, they've got more money than the rest of us. And so when we needed money, we would end up going to the kid who saved his money to borrow money. Right. And to some extent, the Jewish community has kind of mastered that. They were the original bankers. They were the first bankers in Europe anyway. And now, I mean, of course, everything started in Africa. We know this, right? So they copied off of us, right? So they had these bankers in ancient Europe, and most of them were part of that community. They lived in the slums because nobody wanted to associate with them, except for when they needed money. And as part of their culture, as part of their deliberate cultural intentionality, they held on to their money. You know, when they got a dollar, their culture said, you don't spend that dollar, you hold on to that dollar. And so as a result, they were able to loan dollars out to other people or whatever the currency was at that time, because they made a decision to take that particular role in society. So what I would say to you guys is that, you know, I encourage you, never ever let go of the intentionality of your economic condition. There is an intentionality that goes into being broke, which is a cultural mindset. It's a decision that, look, okay, I think about this. If you make $50,000 a year, you're still going to have $500,000 that has flown through your hands in a 10-year period. Now, of course, a big chunk of that goes to the IRS. A big chunk of that goes to paying bills. A big chunk of that goes to necessities, to food, things like that. We know this, right? But then I was thinking about this song. Anybody remember that old song? Just got paid Friday night, Body Hunter. Remember that? Yeah. And it's like, I just got paid, right? A great song, right? It made you feel good. And the song was popular and it was very relatable. Why? Well, because everybody knows that feeling. Everybody knows how good you feel when you just got paid and it's Friday night. You're free. So you got two things. You got money and freedom. Right. That's what you spend your whole life chasing anyway, is money and freedom. Right. Because freedom and money are connected. Right. So you got money and you got free time. So you're feeling as good on a Friday night as you have felt the entire week. You don't feel that good on a Monday morning. You don't feel that good when it's Tuesday afternoon at 2:00 and you just had lunch. You're starting to get the itis and you're starting to get sleepy and you wish you could go home. Right. But when you just got paid and it's Friday night, you feel really good. Well, that song was relatable because there's a culture behind that particular ideology. There's a culture behind that says, okay, let's make a song that people can relate to. So the song isn't going to be, feeling good because I saved my money, or just bought some real estate, feeling powerful, or just set up a trust fund for my kids. Like, they didn't sing about that. They sang about just got paid, it's Friday night, right? Because the culture, the intentionality of the culture is one that says that most of the people that are going to listen to this song, they don't have their own businesses. They work for other people. So they're not building wealth. They're getting paychecks, right? And then also receiving money sort of instills a good feeling because it's Friday night, which means now I convert from being a worker for capitalism to becoming a consumer for capitalism. At no point in this song is there any reference to being an owner in capitalism or being a producer in capitalism. Remember, I told you guys about the way economies work. You've got producers and you've got consumers. You've got owners and you've got renters, and you've got employers and you've got employees. So the song doesn't reference being an owner, being a producer, or being being an owner or producer or an employer, right? It references the thing that people can relate to, which is just got paid. It's Friday night. I am an employee. I now get to become a consumer. And after I pay my rent, I'm going to go and support capitalism by going to the club and popping bottles, right? Do you follow what I'm saying? Give me a yes in the chat if you get what I'm saying. I know that sounds that's kind of a weird way. You've probably never seen it sort of taught this way, but these are the things I enjoy. I enjoy seeing all the little ways that our culture teaches us how to view money. right? And it's very slick. It's very sneaky, right? White supremacy wouldn't work if it were blatant and wide open. They have to sneak it into your food. Like they got to sprinkle the poison in the food that you eat every day, and then get you to become a servant to capitalism, which is actually the way Europeans have done things for over 1,000 years. When Alicia and I were watching this old, she's a professor too. She's into psychology, so we talk a lot about psychology because that's what she's really interested in. And we were watching this thing. It was on the Great Courses, and it was a great course about the Black Plague in Europe. And one of the things they talked about was the economic system in Europe 1,000 years ago. Well, 1,000 years ago, the economic system was very similar to what it is right now. You had 90% of the people who were trained to work extremely hard at very low wages to support the lifestyle of the top 10%. The top 10%, the nobility lived well. Everybody else was a worker. Everybody else was a peasant, right? So in general, the opportunity that you have in America is that you actually get the chance to switch roles. If you can overcome your programming, then you can go wherever you want, right? If you can just sort of get away from and just say, okay, this is not what I'm going to do, then you can go in a different direction. So the slavery is a little more subtle now. And as I mentioned, I'd love to mention to you guys that I don't think they're ever going to pay reparations for slavery, not anytime soon, but they've been giving you preparations for slavery since you were a child. So when people say, well, why is it that the public school system doesn't teach financial literacy? Why? They teach everything else. They can teach you how Billy can have two daddies, but they can't teach you anything about how to balance the checkbook or how to build wealth. Well, that's because that's not their job and not their goal. They don't want everybody thinking the way the billionaires and the millionaires think, because then there will be no workers to support the billionaires and the millionaires. Okay. So just keep that in mind. That's very important. Intentionality is really important. So be very intentional about how you train your children. Wealth doesn't tend to happen by accident. It tends to happen because somebody made a conscious decision or a conscious effort in order to get there. So I'm going to answer a few of your questions now. The questions that have been pre-submitted. Like I said, every week we will meet Tuesday. We always meet Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern for those of you who are new, and also every piece of content, the places you can submit your questions, everything is right there. If you log in at theblackstockmarketprogram.com, you'll find it right there. Okay, so the first question is from Pacola Brown. Pacola asks, what index fund would you suggest to invest my money for my granddaughter for longevity? Well, Pacola, I'm not going to make a recommendation on any particular index fund, but I will say this. There are things out there. Vanguard has a lot of great funds. If you just want to get a piece of the S&P 500, literally, I can tell you how to make your granddaughter close to being a millionaire in about 5 minutes. It would take you less than 5 minutes to set your granddaughter up for life. Everybody who's got kids or grandkids should probably listen, because this is going to change your children's lives. If you do 80% of what I tell you right now, your children and grandchildren will be either millionaires or very close to it. Are you listening? Tell me, please confirm to me that you're hearing me right now. This is very important. You can go into, say, a Robinhood or a Stash account and set up an account. It doesn't have to be a custodial account in the child's name, just an account where the child will be the beneficiary at some point. Set it up according to that $5 a day investing plan that I put together for you guys. And it's very, very basic, very, very simple. Anybody can do it. And literally have it set where you're going to automatically deposit, say, at least $30 or $40 a week into that account, and the thing that you would buy would be what they call a SPDR, SPDR. SPDR, the SPDR, is an S&P 500 indexed account, which basically tracks the entire S&P 500. Basically what that means is that every week when that money's going in, your granddaughter is going to own a piece of McDonald's. They're going to own a piece of Nike. She's going to own a piece of Apple. She's going to be an owner in Tesla. She's going to be an owner in Google, right? But little pieces of those companies. And if you do that consistently, then what happens is that based on the history of the stock market, if a person had done that for you when you were a child, just some small amount of money every week, then what happens with the $5 a day investing plan? I've talked about the math to you guys before. I like to talk about it a lot because it's really the basic stuff, the little tiny changes that make all the difference in the world. And basically after about 10 years, that amount grows. If you're doing $5 a day, which is less than a Popeye's chicken value meal, or $35 a week, you would literally get to it's called the S&P 500 Spider Index. It's an ETF, which is an exchange traded fund, which is a lot like a mutual fund. And basically, the ticker symbol is SPDR, by the way. And so after about 10 years, if you're doing the $5 a day investing plan, your child has about maybe $29,000 to $30,000 in the account. After a decade, after 20 years, they have about $100,000. After 30 years, they have $250,000. After 40 years, they have $750,000. So by the time they're 40, they've got $750,000. Now, if you flip that and did say $10 a day, which is about $70 a week, which is still less than what people put into their car note, then your child actually has double those amounts. So instead of having 30,000 at the 10-year mark, 100,000 at the 20-year mark, $250,000 at the 30-year mark, and $750,000 at the 40-year mark, they actually have 60,000 at the 10-year mark, 200,000 at the 20-year mark, $500,000 at the 30-year mark, and 1.5 million at the 40-year mark. And what's beautiful about this process is that anybody can do it. Finance and investing has become heavily democratized. This whole sort of dichotomous thinking that that if you live in a capitalist society, then you have no form of socialism or upward mobility. That's a complete lie. America is overly capitalist, but to say that there's no opportunity for social mobility is just not true. There are many people who, including many people on the far left, who are like Bernie Sanders, who makes millions of dollars a year, many of whom may have started off with very little and actually grew into becoming wealthy people because they invested in education and somebody bought a house. Their parents bought a home and left them a home. Little things like that, right? So the stock ownership thing, I think, is a great opportunity to ensure that, say, by the time that child is 30 years old, they've got hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this is a basic plan that requires actually no financial literacy. It's something you can actually do today that would take you probably less than 5 minutes to do. And the key idea is that you don't want to touch it at that point. When I did a lecture, I did that special lecture. Actually, where's that lecture at? I think it's at 100yearfamilyplan.com. I'm gonna double check. I think the URL is 100yearfamilyplan.com. I put together a special lecture on that page where basically I showed how a typical family, a regular family, just like you and I, regular people, could actually have $100 million in assets within, say a 100-year period, 2 or 3 generations, right? So this was big picture thing, and this was way out in the future, though. This is like 2 or 3 generations down, but still, it's one of those beautiful things where when you harness the power of compound interest, you can grow this into amazing things. But then what you do is, if you think about it in terms of like maybe military strategy, one thing I've noticed, like with military strategy, and I use this example because I have a lot of soldiers that follow me, because I love my soldiers. Like, first of all, because I respect soldiers, but then second of all, because they tend to, so my soldier friends don't spend as much time whining about a problem as they spend actually solving the problem. They execute the mission. So you're on a mission. You have a mission for your family. No matter what your situation is, you have a mission. So it's up to you to decide if you want to fulfill it or not. And one of the things that it makes me think about is in military, before they go and they decide they want to conquer a territory, they might go in and do a bombing raid where they'll have the planes fly over and they'll bomb the city, to sort of clear the path for the ground troops. And after you bomb the city like crazy, then you start sending the troops in to kind of finish the job, right? I know that's kind of a gruesome example, but whatever. I don't know. I've been playing video games with my kids a lot lately, so maybe it's made me more violent. Who knows? But here's the point. I think of that $5 a day plan as the bombing campaign for your kids. Like, you want your children to conquer their future. You want your children to conquer white supremacy. You want your children to be able to experience the joys of freedom and conquer anything trying to hold them back. You want them to burn through any obstacle. You want them to have Black excellence, all these things, right? So that $5 a day plan to me is that first stage to liberating them with that bombing campaign. Like, son, I'm gonna bomb the future for you and clear a complete path for you, so that when you're 25 years old, you're not going to be in these typical Negro struggles that we hear about every day, where you've got all these people that can't even make a move because they can't get access to $5,000. They have a great business idea, can't get $5,000 to get it off the ground. They really want to own a house, but they can't get, 10 grand to go buy a house, right? Or they really want to quit their job, but they can't quit their job because they're so deep in student loan debt that they can't get out of it. So you're kind of bombing the future and clearing that path and saying, now you have no excuses. But then remember, after the bombing campaign, you send in the ground troops. So what would that analogy be? Well, to me, the ground troops would be preparing your child to be economically intelligent enough so that they know what to do with that opportunity. It's one thing, it's like if you think about basketball, it's one thing if I can clear a path for you to get an open shot, but it's another thing for you to know how to shoot the basketball. If it doesn't matter if I could give you the most wide open shot in the world, but if you throw the ball over the backboard, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I get you open, you're going to waste the opportunity. So the reason that most wealthy families lose all their wealth within 1 or 2 generations, 70% of wealthy families lose all their wealth in 1 generation, 90% of wealthy families lose all their wealth in 2 generations. The reason wealthy families lose all their wealth in 1 or 2 generations is because they did not go in for the kill. They did not complete the job. They cleared the path for the kids, and the kids threw the ball over the backboard because nobody taught them how to dribble and shoot. So for you, what you do is you want to make sure that your children, before they receive any other piece of these ridiculous educational curriculums that are out there, I see Norman says teaching our own. I'm sorry, but I think smart Black people, intelligent Black people, meaning the people that are in this room right now, we got more sense than everybody else. I'm sorry. The world is stupid. The world is crazy. A lot of y'all are like me. You were born on the wrong planet. You were born on the planet of ignorance and debauchery and rappers rapping about killing people and having sex with the devil and selling their vagina for $2, right? You live in a crazy world. So you've got more sense than the rest of the world does. So what you do is you use that common sense to say, okay, to solve this problem, I'm going to prepare my kids to go in for the kill. If you have 2 people and you hand each of them $500,000, their mindset will make all the difference in the world in terms of what happens to that money at that point. It's like NBA players. You got some NBA players who take their $10 million a year salary and they're going to flip it into $1 billion. They're going to be billionaires before they're done because they're smart, like LeBron James. But then you got some NBA players, like maybe Antoine Walker, who, you give them $10 million a year, the money's gone, right? Mindset is everything. Training and skills, everything. Even with LeBron, I doubt that LeBron has taken a bunch of classes on finance and investing, but I bet you the people around him have. I know that LeBron sends the people in his camp to school to learn the skills that he may not have because he says, my specialty is playing basketball. I'm focused on that. But you need to go to the Nike facility and learn how to negotiate contracts. You need to go to culinary school so that you can become my dietitian. You need to go and study with the people over at Fidelity or at the Harvard Business School to learn how to manage my assets. And then boom, you've got a great team. So with your children, if you prepare them when they're young, right, you groom them to be the children of a wealthy family, right? That's a different type of grooming. That's a different type of education. Public school will teach them how to be worker bees. Even state universities teach them how to be worker bees. Well, you're building wealth. You've cleared the path for your children. You've gone on the bombing run. So you've cleared up, opportunities for them that 95% of our kids don't even have. So your educational process has to be one that teaches them how to manage assets. For example, I have a friend whose father was wealthy. She actually lives in Africa. Her father was very wealthy from cows, and her grandfather had cows, and her great grandfather had cows, and they literally passed this generational wealth through cows, from one generation to the next. And then her father passes, and she becomes the head of the family empire. And suddenly she's sitting in meetings with investment advisors and real estate people and lawyers and dealing with all the complexities that come with being rich. Well, there's a grooming process that she had to go through to be ready for that, right? So you have to groom your children to know what to do if they've got $500,000 in the bank so they don't go out here and act like a damn buffoon. Right? Because you got too many buffoons out here that literally do things with money that don't make any sense. So make sure your child understands the fundamentals of how the stock market works, of course. Real estate, how to acquire real estate, just the very basics of that. And lastly, the skill of how to run a business. They don't have to be a business owner. They don't have to be an entrepreneur, but they should understand the basics of entrepreneurship so that they can have the kind of creative thinking necessary to take that $500,000 or $300,000 that you leave them and flip that into $1 million or more. It's very easy to do if you know what you're doing. It's very hard to do if you don't. Okay. So intentionality and culture. Plan your empire. It will not come by accident. Nobody's going to give it to you. It will not come through a lottery ticket or a record deal or an NBA contract. It's going to come from you making a plan and you planting the seed. Got it? Good. Okay. So let me go to your next question here. Charity Johnson asks, these are pre-submitted questions, by the way, if you just came in your opinion, are these stocks more of a long-term play or stock option play? Okay, you list a lot of stocks here, Charity. I don't know the details of every stock. I'll point to I'll look at the ones that I know. I see Workhorse and Aphria, looks like APHA, which Aphria is a cannabis company. I see Aphria and Workhorse as option plays, meaning that I used to own Workhorse in order to sell the options. Now, those of you who bought Workhorse, just know that there's a big class action lawsuit happening with Workhorse where a group of investors are alleging that the stock price was artificially pumped up by management by basically overstating the potential that they were going to actually get that U.S. Postal Service contract to make those electric vehicles. So there are a lot of people alleging various types of fraud, and you can participate in that lawsuit. Just Google it, look it up, and you can reach out to the law firm and become a part of that suit if you are a shareholder. I personally made a lot of money from Workhorse because I wasn't waiting for Workhorse stock to go up. I just sold the options. And anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about or wants to learn more about stock options and how they work, I have a whole masterclass on it. It's stockoptionsmasterclass.com. So feel free to go to stockoptionsmasterclass.com if you haven't taken a look. Okay. So the next thing that the next question I'm looking at here is, she says, what's the rule of thumb for the number of shares to purchase in order to really see a 4-digit ROI? Okay, so Charity, if you're talking about a 4-digit ROI, that's pretty big. I mean, I guess you're talking about like 1,000%, which I guess would be 10xing your investment. That's not something that is, that's not easy to do in a short period of time. It's very easy to do in a long period of time. But if you're talking about 10xing your investment, meaning I put in, $1,000 and I turned it into 10,000, that sort of fast money thing doesn't typically happen in the stock market. And when it does, it's because you've taken a lot of extraordinary risk, meaning, yeah, you could go put your money on some deep out of the money call options and hope for the best, but there's a greater chance that instead of getting a 10x return, you're going to lose everything you put up. So if you are going into the market in a trader-like capacity, I think it's just very important to remember that trading is not the same as investing, right? So investing is more of a long-term process where you're growing wealth in a systematic fashion. Trading is just kind of rolling the dice, shooting the craps, shaking the bones or whatever. And that's fine. I mean, people do that, right? But when you gamble, you should gamble with your extra money. You should gamble with an okay to the idea that you may lose everything. And in that case, I've seen people get 1,000% return, things like that. Now, in terms of all the different ways of making money, the easiest ways I've seen people, or the quickest ways I've seen people make a lot of money really fast, is by learning how to start a business and finding all these little pockets of opportunity where you can actually build a business without spending a lot of money, maybe based on skill you have or something like that. Like I've seen women, that know how to do hair, create hair care lines, and they're able to, set the brand up properly. Next thing you know, they're making $80,000 a month or something like that. So I think entrepreneurship is a great way to make cash flow and quick cash flow, even a side hustle, right? Even a little side business where you're serving some small demand. And that requires a type of thinking that you may want to get by taking a course or something like that. And then the stock market, though, to me is more of a place where the more secure money tends to be longer term money from long-term buy and hold strategies. It's not something where you're going to get a lot of the quick flips. Cryptocurrency has grown probably the fastest out of all the investment classes. But remember, in 2017, crypto had a crash. A lot of people had, $50,000 invested in crypto, and that turned into $10,000 overnight. So remember that what goes up can come down, and there are very few places where you can get all the reward with none of the risk. The world just doesn't work that way. Okay. But there are some places out there. There are some pockets of opportunity. So there you go. All right. So Robin Jackson, what is a cash sweep account in my TD Ameritrade account? I did not initiate it. Should I keep it? All a cash sweep account is in TD Ameritrade, Robin, is it's basically a place where they put your cash and you earn interest on your cash until you decide to invest your cash. The interest is nothing. It's almost non-existent. Savings accounts just really are a ridiculously sad way to grow your money because your money doesn't grow. It just kind of sits there. It's like planting your garden in concrete. It just doesn't grow. So in order to get a yield on your money, there are some, ETFs and stocks out there that pay dividends pretty consistently. There's a little bit more risk involved, but that might be a better way to get that small amount of consistent income. But if your capital base isn't that big, it's not going to be a ton of money. Like I have stocks I own that pay me dividends, and it'll be like, I'll get a little notification once every couple of days, like, oh, you received $1.45 from McDonald's, right? Or today Nike paid a dividend. You got $2.82. That's not really enough to really move the needle. And so I think I like selling stock options as a way to make a little bit more money. But everything you do that generates cash flow always comes with risk. So never think you're going to get away from that. That's always there. Terrell. Let's see. Hey, Doc, I paid for a private consultation 2 weeks ago. Your support staff. Oh, okay. So Terrell, I think that was taken care of. So so every now and then, I don't do a lot of private consultations, but if you wanted to do one, you can feel free to email support@theblackbusinessschool.com. That's support@theblackbusinessschool.com. The private consultations are not cheap. It's probably better to just talk to me in class. And that way you can submit your question. I'll answer your question. But sometimes people want to talk to me directly, and you can feel free to do that. And so, Terrell, I saw a note about you today. So I think they took care of you. Okay, so Philip Wright. Dr. Watkins, I don't want to work endless hours in business. Should I invest in existing e-commerce business or an e-commerce startup? I'm trying to understand the present future value of financial assets of both business models. Okay, so Philip, it looks like you got two questions there, but what I'll do is I'll collapse that into one discussion about not working endless hours in a business. And I think this is really important. A lot of you were led to believe that if you have a business that you should be busting your butt and working, nonstop and everything else. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, right? I'm not saying that can't be part of the process, right? Where you start that business, you grind and you hustle, and I think I saw a brother that has a real great platform called Sleep is for Suckers or something like that. And I immediately said, wow, I like this guy a lot. He's smart, but I don't agree with that. I think sleep is for everybody. And I love to get my sleep because sleep is a part of my mental health. If I don't get enough sleep, I'm grumpy. My body starts to do weird things. And actually there was a person who, a guy who studied cancer, and he studied thousands of cancer patients around the world. And one of the things he found was that your likelihood of getting cancer, according to this person, was linked to how much sleep you got. Sleep was one of the factors in determining whether or not people get sick and have cancers. And it makes sense because when you sleep, your body is supposed to, that's when it regenerates itself and all that. And so knowing yourself is really important. He also said that it was, just as a little factoid, he linked it to, I think it was sleep, drinking enough water, which I got water right here. He said, literally going to the bathroom, getting those toxins out of your body, right? Just basic stuff that makes sense, right? And I remember learning this a long time ago, that when I was thinking about the things that, anybody seen that? I know it's a little bit of a tangent, but I promise you it's worthwhile. Did anybody see the movie Soul by Disney? Like, Disney did a movie called Soul that had Jamie Foxx in it, and it was a really good movie. And basically it was about sort of your soul and being in the zone and really, whether you can be in a good zone or a bad zone. If you're in a bad zone, you're like stuck in a rut and your life isn't worth, it doesn't have much meaning, but you're in a zone that way too. You're hypnotized by whatever crappy, mediocre life that you've chosen, right? Well, then you got other people that go into the zone where they're just, playing basketball, or they're a great artist, or they're a great musician or writer or whatever, right? And so one of the things that was interesting about the movie, and the point that was made, which I thought was really great, was the whole time, and they always do this in movies, by the way. It's called the hero's journey. Like a lot of these movies have the same blueprint. And one of the things about his hero's journey is in the beginning, he's looking for one thing. And at the end, he gets the thing he's looking for, but realizes that the thing he really wanted was with him all along. So the whole movie, and this is a spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen it, but the whole movie, he wants to be this famous jazz musician. He wants to perform with the best jazz artists and everything. Like, that's a big deal. Like, I want to be famous. I want to be successful. I want to achieve my goal, right? And then he gets that. But then he looks back on his life and realizes that actually the essence of life kind of came from the little things, like, you know, eating your favorite ice cream, or sitting to have a good conversation with your special friend, or you know, I don't know, a nice walk in the park, you know, on a Sunday afternoon. And I identify with that really well, because that was something I remember figuring out myself was, you know, I spent all that time wanting to do all the all of these sort of surface things that all of us aspire to, right? It was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go out here and I'm gonna become really successful, and I'm gonna make sure everybody knows who Dr. Boyce Watkins is, and I'm gonna make money, and I'm gonna be highly educated, and I'm gonna win awards and all that, right? And I got all that, right? I've given speeches all over the planet. I've been on TV probably 1,000 times now, maybe 500 times. I don't know. I've made plenty of money and all these other things. And it was great. It was really fun. But here's what I figured out 20 years ago, maybe 15, 20 years ago, was I realized that really wasn't the key to my happiness. I realized, I said, man, this is terrible. Now that I have these things, I realized that I don't care. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's part of the process. Sometimes you got to get it in order to know that this really isn't the thing, right? And if you ever see like really successful people who have $1 billion in the bank, who are like depressed and suicidal and on drugs, I believe it's because they really haven't found their joy, and they haven't found their true purpose. They think their purpose was to become a famous actor, when really their purpose might have been something very basic, like, you know, just finding your bliss by taking your afternoon nap and spending time with your kids. And so what I learned was that the things that, at least in my own life, in my own journey, that made me happy was literally little things like, number one, getting away from white people who hate my guts. I didn't like working for white people. I don't hate white people. I just don't want to work for them because it's terrible. Sleeping in, getting a chance, you know, on days where I want to sleep in, I'll sleep till 11 o'clock because I want to sleep until I don't want to sleep anymore, right? Everybody thinks I don't sleep because I work a lot. No, I work a lot because I love what I do, but I sleep all the time. I take 2 naps a day, sometimes 3. Taking my afternoon nap. I wouldn't trade anything. There's no job you can offer me anywhere right now that would make me give up my afternoon nap. And then they add on other things, spending time with my kids, you know, eating my favorite food, drinking a bottle of water. If I don't drink a bottle of water in a day, I don't feel balanced, right? So I encourage you to understand who you are so you can find out what is going to give you your balance and give you your true wealth, because that's going to matter a whole lot more than just going out and making a bunch of money. Like if you go make a bunch of money, like you become an entrepreneur, and this is where the conversation led me down that direction, is the person was talking about the fact that they don't want to work countless hours running a business. Well, you got to think about that when you go run a business. Like, don't go do something just because people said you can make more money doing it. You know, don't go just jump into an industry just because there's more money there. And this is counter to your training. You were trained as a kid to believe that you should go do any job anybody offers you that pays you the most money. If somebody said, I'll pay you $300,000 a year to shovel manure all day, a lot of people would jump at that job. And there's nothing wrong with that, not judging that. But I think maybe taking a moment to reflect on what you really want to do and figuring out like sort of what's your tipping point, right? Maybe if you're destitute and you have no other opportunities, of course, you do what you got to do, right? But what happens when you get to the point where you've got enough? You've got enough food. You've got enough savings in the bank. You've got a good quality of life. Maybe you got a good woman or a good man next to you. You got some kids you love and you want to spend time with them. And then somebody else comes along. You know, the curse of being good at things is that something else always comes along where there's another opportunity to go make a little more money. How do you make that choice? Like, be very, very intentional. I like that word, intentional. That's our word for today, intentionality. Be very intentional about how you make that choice, because I can tell you just in terms of my own life, when I got good at what I do and people recognized that I was good at what I did, the opportunities never stop coming. There's always another opportunity for me to do another interview. There's always another opportunity for me to give another speech and to get paid plenty of money to give that speech. Another opportunity to write another book, another opportunity to take another trip, right? But you know what stops me is I say, no, me and my 10-year-old are going to the park today, and that is more important than coming on to the Breakfast Club, right? Or I promised Alicia that I would watch Star Trek with her tonight, and I'm gonna do that. So that's gonna interfere with my ability to come on your podcast or whatever it is that you want me to do, or to do this other thing for money. Or I don't want to travel anymore. So no, I know I'm giving up money, but I apologize. I just can't do it. Right. So figure out where your tipping point is so you can find the right balance. If you go into owning your own business, remember there's a million ways to skin that cat. Diving in as a full-time entrepreneur is not a requirement for you to generate some of the income that comes from being a business owner. There are situations that might emerge for you where someone else has a great skill and a great business and a great passion. Let's say, for example, I've always wanted to go deeper into the hair industry, and I have some investments there. I want to get more. Well, if somebody comes along and says, I have a hair salon and it's making money, and I need capital to get this thing going, then my job would be, I'd be like, okay, here's what I can do. I can go raise some money to make the investment. And also I can be a hype man. I can tell people about the business to help with the marketing, but I don't want to go into a hair salon every day. I don't want to do hair. I don't want to learn a new skill. That's not of interest to me, right? Remember, your time is actually your most valuable commodity, but you probably have been convinced to believe that money is the most valuable thing you can access. Well, the paradox is that if you're good at what you're doing, and after you finish making the moves that you're making right now, you'll get to a point where money isn't so scarce anymore, and you're going to have to shift back to understand the value of your time. Do not let people waste your time. That's very, very important. Okay, so next question. Let's see here. These are the questions you submitted. Hold on. I'm clicking here. All right. Next question is from SC. Hey, Dr. Boyce, what would be your recommendation platform or app for trading options in the UK? That's a good question. And shout out to all of the Black Londoners that listen every day. I love you all very much. I love Black London. I cannot wait to see you again. When I went to London and we did an event, and it was totally packed. Like, all you guys came out, and I just want you to know how much I love you. And London is actually one of my favorite cities anywhere. There are a few. I'm going to name a few in London. I got a little list of Saxo Market, Saxo Capital. There's a company called IG, a company called SpreadX, another company called Finco, FINECO. And all these companies allow you to do options trading. Another way you might want to deal with that is go to some of the bigger banks in London and just tell them what you're trying to do, and they can guide you to some sort of platform that will allow you to do that. Same thing is true for any country that you're in right now. Shaquan Talley. Good morning, Dr. Watkins. What would happen to the stock market if the app that I own is no longer available in the future? Don't worry if your app goes out of business and it's a major company like Robinhood or Stash. You're not going to lose your money. Your money is protected because remember, you own the stock. The app does not own your stock. You own that stock. So if I own shares of GE, that's technically a deal between me and GE. I can go to GE and talk to them as a shareholder about the shares I bought in their company. The broker is just the middleman. The broker is the person or the entity that makes the deal happen. They're not the actual owner of the asset. So keep that in mind. Okay, next, Erin Wilson says, does highest implied volatility matter as much when selling a call? What are other things I should look for when deciding which stock to buy for selling options? When I would go through my method of looking for which stocks to buy to sell options, I look at implied volatility. I look at trading volume to make sure it's not some company that's too lightly traded. Lightly traded companies are highly illiquid. I look at the history of that stock to see what that stock has done over time. If it's a stock that has had some crazy price swings and 50% drops and stuff like that, I'd be really careful about that. I look at what type of industry the company's in. There are lots of factors that can go into play with that. And so, and actually that's the next masterclass I'm going to do. I've literally been putting that together for a year, and I'll let you guys know when I announce it. And we're going to spend a weekend, and I'll break down my whole process really carefully. I just want to keep testing it out before I actually release it to anybody. Because if the lab blows up, I want to make sure I'm the only casualty. I'm not going to teach you guys anything that would be harmful to you. So that's why I'm taking my time with this. But I'll let you guys know when it's ready. Don Watkins, can a rollover IRA from a previous job go to an Ameritrade SPDR, SPDR? That's what we were talking about earlier, the S&P 500 SPDR, the ETF that allows you to own a piece of every stock in the S&P. Yes, you can. You can roll over your IRA to any brokerage account you may have. And all you got to do is just contact them and tell them what you're trying to do. And that will allow you to do that. Okay, next question. Terriel Tomlin. Since there are so many different areas on E-Trade, how do I comb through them? I have an E-Trade account. How do I make money? Okay. Well, to learn E-Trade, what I'm encourage you to do is don't try to learn it all at once. E-Trade has a lot of extra functionality. There's just so much in there that you can do. And so you may want to just watch a tutorial. Just go on YouTube and type in E-Trade tutorial, and they'll explain everything and what's there. And then what happens after that is just repetition kicks in. Just practice every day. Just get in there every day, log into new sections, read what's there. But you're probably not going to ever learn every single thing there is to know on E-Trade. These platforms can be pretty complex. There's a lot going on. And it doesn't mean that the complexity should scare you. It just means that you don't have to feel like you have to understand everything in deep detail in order for you to use it. You may just understand the basics. That's okay too. Next question, Israel Richardson. How can teenagers get into stocks in the stock market and start their profile early? Very easy. There are things called custodial accounts. Custodial accounts are available on apps like Stash and a few others, where you can actually get an account in the name of the child and allow the child to control their own assets. I don't use custodial accounts with my children because my children are a bunch of little spoiled brats. I love them to death, but I told them straight up, this is our family money, and you're not going to get it until you earn it. And so we're going to invest for you. And if you act right, then the trust will release funds to you when you get about 25 years old. If you don't act right, like if you want to go take all our money and go spend it on your new boyfriend or something like that, the trust will not allow that to occur. So ultimately, that's my personal point of view, but I do think it's okay to allow them to have something in their name that allows them to trade consistently. But I'll tell you what, I'm not going to lie. It's really hard sometimes to get kids into money and investing. Some of you are lucky. I know in the Black Millionaires of Tomorrow program, we have a lot of teenagers that are literally making more money than most grownups. They literally have accounts of like $50,000 and stuff like that. Because they just naturally took to it. Like I was like that when I was 12. I wanted money. I wanted to, I was selling candy door to door. I was delivering newspapers. I got my first job as soon as I could. Like I literally started working in a restaurant when I was 14. I started selling candy door to door when I was 12 because I wanted to have money. But sometimes, when you raise these kids in the suburbs or whatever, where they never know scarcity, they've never known what it's like to not have enough food in the refrigerator, or to have things that they want and they can't get it. Like to go in, I remember going into a Wendy's and I fantasized about having enough money to eat at Wendy's. I swear to God. I remember thinking, my God, these cheeseburgers are $2.50. I can't afford to eat here. Right. And I remember thinking, man, it would be really nice. This is how stupid. This is the mind of an 8-year-old. But I remember thinking, man, I can't wait till get enough money where I can go to Wendy's and eat whatever I want, or I can go to the movies and I can get the $4 popcorn and a drink to go with it. Like those are my fantasies. Those are my financial fantasies. And I think that the benefit of having that kind of hunger is that it made me very ambitious at an early age. I wanted to go out here and hustle. And in fact, if you could have replaced all my years in college literally by putting me in a program. If there was a program called How to Make Money Like a Millionaire, where millionaires were teaching me how to become a millionaire like them, I would have took that over college any day of the week, because I went to college and learned all that crap just so I could find a way to not be broke anymore. Like that was literally my motivation. Everybody doesn't have the same motivation. I think it's okay to be you and be who you are. But literally that was what I wanted to know. Sometimes our kids don't have that. And that's what you got to kind of process as well. Is part of the reason that a lot of wealthy families lose their wealth in one generation is because your kids are cursed. You think that they're privileged when really they're cursed. Well, really, you were the privileged one, because there's a privilege in pain. There's a privilege in going through the struggle, right? There's a little bit of Black privilege. Black excellence tends to emerge from the Black struggle. People who are excellent at things are people that tend to have gone through the toughest training program, the most difficult experiences. They've overcome the worst obstacles, right? Those tend to be the strongest people. The people who never trained, the people who never had to overcome anything, the people who had everything that handed to them, those people are disabled. Like we think that that's privilege because everybody's caught up like, oh, that was so traumatic. We shouldn't put kids through trauma. And I get that. I totally get that. But, you know, some of the experiences I had as a kid that would be defined as traumatic, which I'm sure that they were. I'm sure that there's something in all these psychology textbooks that would say that I was traumatized in an unfair way when I was a kid. You know, some of those experiences really made me strong. You know, it made me grateful. It made me, it gave me determination, you know, like getting bullied at school. Like you remember back in the day when you go to school and some bullies like taking your lunch money and beating you up and, you know, and you can't do anything because you're 10 and he's 14 and, you know, he's on the football team and you know, like stuff like that. Not to say I think every kid should have to go through that because it was terrible, but those things give you survival skills. And so if you talk about taking, I believe almost every tragedy, almost every difficulty can be flipped into a positive. And sometimes we forget about the positive. We're so focused on people always being comfortable all the time, no matter where they are, what they're doing or whatever, that we forget that you're making them disabled when you never allow them to go through anything. So it's because I went through so much that I gained the hunger to become successful in so many other things, right? It was because Michael Jordan got cut. He went through the trauma of being cut from the 8th grade basketball team that he was fueled to go on to become the greatest basketball player or one of the greatest players in the history of the NBA. So just always remember the yin and the yang of that. You know, being privileged ain't always a privilege. Sometimes it's a disability. All right. So Marcus, if investing in individual stocks, how many do you usually buy at once for each company? It really depends on how much money you have. It's really about spreading your money out. That's the key idea. And really, even deeper than that, though, you can buy one ETF or one mutual fund and be pretty well diversified. So don't even think you have to go buy a bunch of different stocks. It's really about style. It's about sort of the approach that you're most comfortable with. It's totally up to you. Okay. All right. So now what I'm going to do. So by the way, if you want to, if you send an individual question and you want to see your individual answer and everything else, or you miss a session, we meet every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern. You can log in at theblackstockmarketprogram.com to see the recording. You can also log in to see, all the shares, the different types of stocks that I'm buying each week. I've done this probably for well over a year, and there's just probably maybe 50 or 60 different entries in there. You can take a look at which stocks and why. And then also you can submit your questions to me. And also I encourage you to go to theblackstockmarketprogram.com, log in. It's theblackstockmarketprogram.com, and you can actually go in and leave your question as well and see the curriculum that's already there. There's a ton of curricula there. So if you go in there every day and just kind of watch some videos, not only I personally think that, I don't know, I personally think that this is very entertaining and fun to talk about, right? So and I've been a weirdo for years, so you can go back and literally watch stuff that I did 2-3 years ago. But also it allows you to learn this stuff without the high pressure sort of approach where you have to take exams and know specifics. You don't have to know all the specifics in order to become an adequate investor. Okay. So log into blackstockmarketprogram.com. Feel free to do that. And one thing I want to mention to you guys is actually we're doing, we have the Black Business Lecture Series, which is kind of a Black version of TED Talks with Black entrepreneurs and millionaires that come through the Black Business School to talk about what they're good at. And this week, we've got somebody coming in that's really, really good that you may want to take a look at. Her name is attorney Tanya Nebo. Tanya Nebo is an attorney out of Atlanta whose specialty, her superpower, is that she has helped dozens of families buy franchises. Franchises are a great way to make money because you have a proven business model that's out of the box where they train you, just like, when you took a class in school, they train you on the business model. So what that does is that keeps you from having to go through the stress of figuring out, well, what kind of business do I want to do? How do I do it? What's the best model? Right? That process of just figuring out what business you want to do and how to do it can take 5 years. I've seen people take 5-10 years to get their stuff together in terms of figuring their business out. Well, a franchise allows you to simply pay some sort of setup fee and obtain a family franchise. And then they tell you exactly how to run the franchise. Everything's been tested. They can tell you like, okay, this is how you sell the cheeseburgers, or this is how, this is how people want their carpets done or whatever. And you can take that franchise and kind of run with it as a family business. And this has been a great way for people to get off the plantation. So if you want to go take a look, if you go to theblackbusinessseries.com, theblackbusinessseries.com, if somebody could type that in, I'd appreciate it. It's theblackbusinessseries.com. Her special master lecture is going to be on Thursday, I believe it's 7 or 8 p.m. It's on the landing page, and that's theblackbusinessseries.com. So feel free to go take a look at that, and you can join us for that. Okay, so the next question I see here in the chat is from Portia. Portia says, you mentioned that there are 3 things you must do to make money: invest in stocks, get into real estate. What is the third thing? Starting your own business. The 3 things you want to be in America if you want to be wealthy are: you want to be a property owner, you want to be a stockholder, and you also want to be an employer. Those are, or if you want to hit the whole trifecta, that's how you make money in America. Those are the 3 groups that make money in this country. Deidre Starr, are there any resources, books you recommend on how to pick good stocks? There's so many out there, but you know what? I don't read a lot of those books because I have a PhD in that stuff. So all this stuff is already in my brain. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time necessarily reading about somebody's methodology, because when you get a PhD, you're supposed to actually be the person who writes the books. And it doesn't mean I can't learn from other people, but I can't name books, stock picking books right offhand. So I'm trying to think here. I know that David Bach has some good books, BACH, The Automatic Millionaire, stuff like that. And if reading books is your thing, I'm sure you can go to Amazon and look up a stock picking book pretty easily. But I can just tell you that it's not like it's a matter of necessarily picking the stock that's going to do really well. It's really a matter of picking stocks that fit what you're trying to do. So if you are older and you're trying to minimize risk, then there are lower risk stocks that you can pick. There are stocks, the blue chips and companies that pay dividends and things like that are much lower risk. And that might be something to sort of look at in terms of the style that you invest with as you get older. And then there are the high growth stocks, which are what they call high price earning stocks that are like, like Workhorse and stuff like that, and Tilray, which are companies that don't make a lot of money, but they have a lot of potential. So they're literally trading based on their potential, which makes these companies very fragile. Like a little baby. A little baby has a lot of potential, but it's very fragile. Any little thing could kill a baby and kill all the potential, right, that baby has. Well, those baby stocks are exciting to invest in because the values can go up really, really fast if the potential goes up. But one little thing happens, those things can pop very quickly. So like right now, with the Fed having these issues with interest rates going up or inflation going up, it's causing a lot of these baby stocks to just get body slammed. So I know Warren Buffett studied from a book by 2 people called Graham and Dodd. It's called Value Investing, but I don't recommend reading that unless you just want to really get something that's going to put you to sleep at night. And there's just a ton of other stuff out there. Let's see here. Doc Grant, greetings, doctor. Is there an average PE ratio one should look for when analyzing a stock, or average earnings per share? No, there isn't, because the price earnings ratio, which is the price divided by the earnings per share of the company, the PE ratio varies by industry, right? And there's really no precise scientific way to know exactly what a company's PE ratio should be. But there are analysts who will look at things like the average PE ratio of the entire market at a given point in time and use that as a catalyst to determine whether or not they believe that the stock market may be over or undervalued, right? So ultimately, PE ratios are relevant, but they are not always the number one they're not always the leading way to determine if a stock is over or undervalued, because what happens actually is that there's a couple of theories in finance. One's called the efficient markets hypothesis, which kind of tries to argue that in a good market, stocks are never over or undervalued. And the reason is because of information. Information is very important when it comes to stocks. And so what they try to argue, which I don't even really think I agree with this all the time, I don't think this is always true, is that because this information is publicly available and everybody has it, if a stock is severely undervalued, then people are going to go buy it, right? Smart people are going to say, whoa, this stock is $50 and it's really worth 60. So let's all go buy it. Well, when you start buying something and the demand goes up, the price will go up. So they argue that the price will eventually go back up to 60. Again, I don't believe that. I think that there are too many market mechanics and frictions that cause a problem with that. There's also just this, really fundamental irrationality that investors have that, kind of undermines this whole idea that somehow we magically know the answer to everything. I don't think people know the answer to everything. And so, but generally speaking, PE ratios can tell you a little bit about whether or not an industry is overvalued or the stock market as a whole is overvalued. But even then, there are people like Warren Buffett who get it wrong when it comes to trying to, predict the times when the market's overvalued. Because I'll tell you what, Warren Buffett completely missed out on this entire stock price rise that occurred right after COVID. Because he literally sat on some ungodly amount of cash. Like, I think he had like $180 billion in cash that he was sitting on, and he used none of it or very little of it because he somehow felt that the market was way too overvalued. And I don't get it. I didn't understand. I think that what he felt was that the problems that the stock market was going through at that time, that basically the market didn't have a temporary problem, it had a permanent problem. And that's like sort of knowing the difference between somebody having a cold versus somebody having coronavirus or pneumonia, right? Or maybe HIV or something, right? So he thinks that the market has fundamental horrible problems that are not going to go away. And there are other people who felt that these problems were temporary. Who's right? Nobody knows, because there are fundamental problems in the economy that you should be concerned about. I know right now, I think today, actually, Joe Biden announced a $3 trillion infrastructure spending plan that is, they're not going to fund, they always, the politicians are so funny. If you look at the history, I like to look at the history of these people to know who they really are. If you go back 30 years, it's really funny. Back when, at a time where the federal debt, I think the debt level of the government, I don't know if it was the debt or the deficit, let's say deficit. The deficit was like, 30% of GDP. They were screaming, Biden and others were screaming about how this is too high and we need to balance the budget, and anything we spend money on needs to be funded through tax increases, right? Well, now the deficit, if I'm not mistaken, the deficit, or maybe I think it's the deficit. Yeah, is like 130% of GDP, like literally 5 times higher than it was back then. And Biden's like, oh, let's spend another $3 trillion, right? And so politicians kind of change with the public. Like back then, the public was deeply concerned about the debt levels. Now the public, for some reason, just doesn't care. They're just like, well, our grandkids will pay for it. But here's the funny thing that they do that never works. They just always lie. Is when they want to spend that kind of money, they always say we're going to fund it with blank. We're going to have a tax increase, and the tax increases will pay for the spending. And they never do. It's like when, it's like loaning money to that cousin who ain't never going to pay you back. And he always tells you like, oh, as soon as I get my money, cuz you're going to get your money. And eventually you're like, yeah. Well, they're not, tax increases are hard to pass in the United States because they're just not that popular. Republicans never support them. And a lot of Democrats don't support them. A lot of liberals who are anti-capitalist, everything else, are making millions of dollars a year, and so they're pretty capitalist if you're making that kind of money. But so what's going to happen is this $3 trillion is going to be funded mostly through additional debt. Your government has hit a level of debt that is frighteningly unsustainable. I think right now they spend $300 billion a year on interest alone, and that is in a low interest rate environment. So what is going to occur when Biden, and this is something that the financial analysts are talking about right now, when Biden goes and passes $3 trillion of infrastructure spending and doesn't adequately support that through proper tax increases, then that's going to crowd out the public debt market. And what that means is that the government is going to have to sell bonds in order to pay for this. Well, when they're pushing out these bonds, then what's going to happen is that the interest that they're going to have to pay is going to go up. So the amount of interest that the government pays is likely going to go from, say, 1% on average to 2%. Right, which means going from $300 billion a year in interest to $600 billion a year in interest. And at some point, the Ponzi scheme is going to crack. At some point, the government is going to commit the ultimate cardinal sin in all of finance and economics, which is they're going to default on their debt payments. When they default on their debt payments, that is going to disrupt and undermine every sacred financial model that has been created in the last 60 years. All the models that we studied when I was in grad school working on my doctorate made one fundamental assumption. The fundamental assumption was that that government debt was risk-free, that the United States government was like an economic god, that it would never default on its interest payments at any point ever. Well, that is going to happen. And when it does, all economic hell will break loose because all of these models will fall apart. And you could be in the middle of a crazy economic situation because China is always lurking in the background to say, we don't even understand why the world is so obsessed with having dollars as their common currency. Anyway, it should be our currency. The renminbi should be the global currency, not the dollar. And China is smart. China is strong. They're stronger than us. They're more determined than us. I've taught a class in China. I saw those students up close, and just the way they move as a unit is extraordinary. They practice powernomics better than any country on this planet. The US is very divided, very chaotic, very crazy. China, it just moves in lockstep. So the next 100 years, economically and otherwise, belong to China. The United States will not win. There's nothing I see right now, educationally, politically, or otherwise, that tells me that the U.S. will be strong over the next 100 years. China will be the global economic and political superpower. Africa is going to rise as well, though. Africa has the youngest population on earth, trillions of dollars in wealth through its people alone, let alone all the other resources that are in Africa. The problem, though, for Africa is that Africa's strength and growth is going to be financed by China. China sees what Africa can do and what Africa has, and that's why they're working so hard to get a foothold in Africa. That's going to be the world that your children and grandchildren live in. So maybe you want to prepare them by maybe allowing them to learn Chinese. My brother and I have already decided that with my niece and nephew, we want them to learn Chinese and Spanish as their two secondary languages. We don't want them to be restricted to the United States because the world they live in is going to be different from the world you and I lived in. So it's very important to know which way the wind is blowing. We can't compete with China. Period. The only way we could compete with China is if somehow China, if you look, the history of China actually says that they've actually had times where they've had political upheaval and revolutions and all that. The only way the U.S. will ever be able to compete with China is if there's some sort of revolution that flips the Communist Party out of power and creates a little bit of chaos in that country. That's the only way we'll be able to compete. If they maintain any sort of semblance of what they are right now, and they do it for 100 years, we lose. We do not win. They are just smarter, more strategic than we are in almost every area. All right. So Arian said, let's see. Oh, okay. You already asked about implied volatility, so I'm gonna skip that one. Let's see. Tesla Alex says, "You are my superhero." Oh, well, thank you. I'm not a superhero, but I can pretend to be one if you want me to. But you're my hero, man. I'm about to get my first cash out refinance. I want to use this as investment capital. Good or bad idea? Yeah, why not? Your money, I think money should be invested no matter what. Always invest. Make that your culture. Like if that's just your thing, then you're gonna do better than everybody else. Portia says, I don't have kids yet. Could I still do the $5 a day spider method in my name and hand it over to my potential future children? Portia, if you do that, they will be singing songs about you for the next 200 years in your family. You will be your child's greatest hero. And I want you to really document that and tell that story so that your children and grandchildren can know how Grandma Portia way back in 2021 was setting them up to be very successful in the future. Like that, they're going to remember that. So yes, what you're doing exactly what I've spoken on this. And I'm hoping people will hear me when I say this, is that a child doesn't have to be born yet for you to start investing for that child's future. My daughter, she's we're not biologically related, but she's my daughter. She just had my grandson, and he's a beautiful little kid. And we've been planning for him way before he was born. I've been investing for him way before he even existed, before he was even a concept, before she even met his father. I was like, one day you're going to have kids, and I want to start planning now so that your kids are going to be in good shape in 30 or 40 years. So there's nothing saying that you have to wait to a certain point. The sooner, the better. That's just the rule. The sooner, the better. Tim Fisher, do you know any water ETFs to invest in? I don't have anything in mind right offhand. So sorry. I wish I knew. I don't know of any water ETFs. Renee, there is a new Bitcoin ETF actually for that Fidelity is trying to create. I think they just applied for it though. I don't think they got it. But yeah, when Bitcoin ETFs start coming out, I think that'll be really good for Bitcoin. I'm really bullish on Bitcoin. I got a lot of money in Bitcoin. Let's see, Chi-Town. Hey, Dr. Boyce, I just heard a very unjust story that I'd like to get out. Is that something that your media firm can assist me with? Well, send it over. Email it to email producer@flynubianmedia.com. Producer@flynubianmedia.com. I'll say it one more time. Producer@flynubianmedia.com, and send it to her. Her name is Taryn, and we can see what she does with that. Portia, what are options? Options are basically financial instruments that are what they call derivatives of stocks. So a derivative of something is like a spinoff. It's like, remember how you had, you might have a TV show and then one of the characters is really popular and you do a spinoff show with that character. That's kind of what derivatives are in the stock market. You got the stock, that's the main show. And then you've got the options, which are kind of a spinoff of the actual stock. So just like your kids are a spinoff of you, the options move in a direction similar to the stock. So a lot of people will invest in the options because they don't have enough money to invest in the stock. So I might want to, be a part of the Disney ride. Let's say I actually did this with Disney. So I've always been a big fan of Disney because the company has great management and all that stuff. So I didn't have a lot of capital to make my move on Disney. My money was locked up elsewhere. So what I did was I bought options in Disney stock, and I bought some long-term options. And I put my money in those options, and Disney stock went up. My options went up. So I made a bunch of money, and options allow for a lot of leverage on the upside and the downside, meaning that with options, you can invest a little and make a lot, but you can also invest a little and lose a lot, right? So if I buy Disney stock, the chances of my investment going down to zero are slim to none. That's probably not going to happen. But if I buy options in Disney, then if the price drops enough, I can lose everything. So that's why, you shouldn't see options as all good or all bad. They just allow you to calibrate your risk in different ways that allow you to get more out of your portfolio. It's like seasoning your food. The options season my stock so that I can actually get exactly the right combination of ingredients that I want. So if you want to learn more, I have a whole options masterclass. Feel free. It's stockoptionsmasterclass.com. I did the masterclass. People loved it. The recording's right there. Stockoptionsmasterclass.com. Feel free to go take a look. So Ronald says, hey, Dr. Watkins, great day. What do you think about investing in crypto tech royalties? Are there any cryptocurrencies that you're bullish on? Okay, first of all, crypto tech royalties, I don't know much about that industry. I'm not a big believer in, I've even had people come to me about new cryptocurrencies they want to create. I want to create a coin. And I think you have to be careful about that, because when people see that there's money in a certain area, they run to it and they just start creating crap, just throwing it out there because they know people will buy anything. They're doing that with SPACs, which are special purpose acquisition companies. SPACs have become very popular, and a lot of SPACs are just crap. They should just call them craps because instead of SPACs, because a lot of these SPACs, or maybe that's crap backwards. Maybe Spark. Spark is crap backward almost, right? So yeah, instead of calling SPACs, you call Sparks because it's crap spelled backwards, where basically a lot of these SPACs are just garbage. Like, they're overpriced. They know that people will just buy anything, and it gets to the point where it's almost borderline insanity and, even criminal, just the fact that they're just throwing this crap out there. IPOs, same thing. In a hot market, companies are like, oh, well, everybody's buying anything, so we're going to issue more shares of stock because we know people aren't going to look into what the actual value is. Everybody just wants to buy it. So I feel like crypto is kind of in that same category. So I would be real careful about over investing in any new crypto that comes out. You're usually dealing with a highly illiquid market. I knew some guys, they're called the gentlemen of crypto. They're really two good brothers that have come through quite a few times, and I like them very much. And I remember once they were talking about how they bought this new crypto for like a penny, and the crypto went up from a penny to 28 cents or something, right? So it's a big deal, right? Ooh, look at all this money. Well, they went to try to sell the crypto, and they couldn't. They couldn't sell it because because there was no market for it. Right? It was like if you have this, $100,000 painting in your living room, your chances of being able to sell that thing, in a couple of days are slim to none, right? So I would just kind of be careful about that. And now, if you want to see what crypto I own, if you go to drboycecrypto.com, at drboycecrypto.com, I actually have a screenshot of the crypto that I bought into. You can have that for free. Feel free to go take a look at that. Why is Amazon not moving up? I have no idea. I haven't taken a look, but I know that a lot of the FANG stocks, Facebook, Amazon, Alphabet, Netflix, and Google. Wait, no, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google, because Google and Alphabet are the same company. These FANG stocks were big tech plays, stay-at-home plays. That's what they referred to them as. These tech giants amassed an enormous amount of power during the pandemic. They were first in line right there with China. China's another company that benefited tremendously from the pandemic. That's why they won't release data to the World Health Organization to allow them to figure out the source of the virus. Because I'm telling you, if you want my 2 cents, this is Uncle Boyce, Dr. Boyce talking, conspiracy theory, call it what you want. But the pandemic worked out way too well for China for me to believe that all this was just, this virus just popped up. I don't believe that. I'm sorry for, call me what you want. I know it's not politically correct to say it, but I do not believe this happened by accident because it worked out too well. It's like that. It's like if somebody farts in the car, the first person who smelt it, dealt it, right? Like, oh, you farted, right? Well, how did you know that the fart was there before anybody even smelled it? Well, because you let the damn thing out. That's why you were prepared. You jumped out of the car first because you farted and you're blaming it on everybody else. China farted. And they knew it happened and they were prepared more than anybody else. The first economy on earth to actually have positive GDP growth this year. There was only one major economy that had positive GDP growth this year. That was China, the epicenter of the virus. How are you the biggest victim on earth of the virus, but yet the biggest economic beneficiary? Before the virus came out, there was I'm gonna stop talking. I'm gonna stop using the word virus because I don't want to get blocked on on the internet. But before all that came out, did you know that Hong Kong was China's #1 problem? The Chinese have an issue with this thing called democracy. They don't like it very much, and they were trying to control Hong Kong. They couldn't because Hong Kong had 1 million people in the streets protesting every day. Well, when this thing comes along, they're suddenly able to pass laws like, well, for your protection, right? Oppression always comes with like this promise of protection. Like a mafia guy knocks at your door, your new business, and says, we want to offer you protection, pay us money, and we'll make sure nobody randomly comes by and kills your whole family, right? Like, what are you protecting them from? You're protecting them from you, right? And so basically China said, for your protection, we passed a new law, a security law that says that gatherings of 2 or more people will lead to you to be arrested. We'll lock you up, right? And ever since that time, they've completely shut down the protests in Hong Kong, and now Hong Kong is under a whole new regime of leadership where basically China is trying to shut it down and control that city, country. I guess city is Hong Kong territory. Is Hong Kong a territory? Is that what it is? Forever, whatever it is, right? So where was I going with this? I forgot. So we were talking about the virus and all that in China. So let me get back. Let me get refocused. So I really just think though in general that, I know what it is. Boom, there we go. I was talking about the power shift that occurred during the pandemic. One of the other power shifts that did occur is the tech stocks gained a ton of economic and political power, like unprecedented, godlike economic power over the economy. They not only do they have almost more money than a lot of governments do, but also they've gained the ability to control public discourse and information. So if somebody's giving you information that doesn't fit whatever mainstream media wants you to think or to know, they're banning people. Rizza Islam, Louis Farrakhan, a lot of people like that can't even, they're blocked from Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff. So the FANG stocks are being challenged for being, for violating antitrust law, which they have. They're being challenged for being, monopolies, oligopolies, or triopolies, which they are. But the problem is that the government isn't going to do anything because your local police station is being run by the drug dealers. the drug dealers have everybody in the police station on their payroll. So they're never going to really investigate the crack house on your block, because the crack house, the people who run the crack house have made sure that the cops are all paid off. Okay. Now, somebody asked about payment plans for the stock options masterclass and other programs. I'll put one on there. I'll put something on stockoptionsmasterclass.com. I'll just add it in there. We'll chop it up if you want to pay in pieces or something like that. And actually, I'll send a little message to my team to try to see what other programs can have some sort of payment process that can allow you to chop it up and make it cheaper. And we keep everything as the prices at the fairest rate we possibly can, because we have to run, a business, right? We have team members we have to pay, so we can't do everything for free, but there are free things there as well. So, so there's a lot of stuff we offer in the Black Business School, and we think we're pretty good at that. All right. So let's see. Timothy says, how do I get your book? Go to drboycebooks.com. You can take a look at some of my books, drboycebooks.com. How do I get started learning stock purchasing? Ask Melanie W. Well, if you log in at the blackstockmarketprogram.com, there is a curriculum there with a bunch of videos that are less than 10 minutes a piece that will get you started on the basics of investing and stuff like that. And then you can go deeper than that. So you can go to the blackstockmarketprogram.com. If you're not enrolled yet, the first month is free. So feel free to go take a look. Let's see. Roby, peace, Dr. Boyce. Hope your house is well. Roby, like Kobe, do you have a fallback strategy for unavoidable financial loss? Yeah, I mean, you should always invest with the worst in mind. Like, you should always imagine, okay, what happens if the whole world falls apart? What happens if I lose everything? What happens if, and the thing is, the riskiest thing you can do as an investor is to do something like, I don't know, have a job. Like people think jobs are secure and safe, and they're not, because companies will fire you in a second. Also, you could lose that job at any time. The pandemic kind of showed that. And also, you're not diversified. You're getting all your money from one source. So the best way to diversify really is to have as many disconnected sources of income and wealth as you possibly can. And that's meaning like uncorrelated. That's the term, uncorrelated, meaning that if, so for example, if let's say that I have two businesses. I sell hot dogs and I sell buns. Well, I think I'm diversified because I have two different businesses, but they're connected. If people stop buying hot dogs, they're going to stop buying buns, right? So instead of having two businesses that are connected, maybe I have one business that's hot dogs. The other one is automotive parts, right? They're not connected. So what happens is that when one thing goes down, the other thing will come in and protect you from the first thing. Right. So you want to think about that. Like one example is 9/11. In 9/11, the problem that they had was that the World Trade Center got attacked, but the base of operations that they were going to work from to deal with a tragedy like 9/11 was at the bottom of the World Trade Center. So not only did the World Trade Center go down, but their base went down because their base was right in the epicenter of where the attack would take place. So some people said, no, your base of operations should have been someplace that wasn't going to be attacked, so that you can go there when your main, tourist attractions get attacked or whatever the case may be. So with investing, it's the same way. So I'll give an example in my own life. I have my fund portfolio where I have a lot of growth stocks, like Workhorse and Jumia and Tilray. And I sell options on those stocks, and it's really cool, and I love it. But that's a risky portfolio. But then I have my safe portfolio, my S&P 500s, and my blue chips that I'm just going to hold and own. And I'm really doing that, doing it for the kids, right? Instead of doing it for the gram, I'm doing it for the grands. I'm doing it for the kids and the grandkids to make sure that they're going to be good and they're going to be wealthy, because these are stocks I don't touch. Then I have my crypto over here. The crypto neighborhood's got 25 different cryptos that we own or whatever. Then you got your real estate over here. Then you got your businesses over there, right? And so what happened was the growth stocks got slammed. There was a point where a lot of these high growth stocks got hit the hardest because inflation fear started to pop in. Not real inflation, inflation fear. The market doesn't just move based on what happened. The market moves based on what people think is going to happen, right? So because you think about it, what is fear? Fear isn't just the presence of danger. It's the belief that there's a presence of danger. So sometimes having nothing to be afraid of and being afraid of nothing can be worse than not being afraid of something, right? In terms of the reaction, right? So basically, even if inflation never arrives, it didn't matter. The expectation of inflation caused the 10-year treasury yield to go up to 2% or close to it, somewhere around there. And that caused these growth stocks, for various reasons we won't go into today, to just get slammed. I mean, they got body slammed. So what happened was, when these growth stocks started dropping in value, I had this portfolio that was burning, like that was bleeding, like, and it was, some of it's on margin, and I'm getting margin calls, and that, so I need to literally, it's almost like a fire, right? Like you have a building that's on fire. To make the fire go out, you got to pour water on it, or liquidity. Money, cash is called liquidity. That liquidity becomes the most important commodity that you can have access to during a financial crisis. Like, think about it. When you go through a tough situation where you lose your job and your car breaks down, what do you need? You need cash. You're not thinking so much about ownership at that point. You're just like, I just need some cash to get me through, for the next 3 weeks, right? So that's why you have your other assets that can provide that liquidity. So the same way when you run into a financial crisis in your family, you lose your job and your car breaks down, you say, okay, let's go to the bank, let's borrow against the house to get through this temporary situation. The same thing can happen with a portfolio. Well, where was I going to get my liquidity to put out the fire that was occurring in my high growth portfolio? Well, I was able to walk across the street and go check out my crypto. Well, crypto is in a whole different neighborhood. Crypto did not burn down the way the growth stocks did. And in fact, crypto had gone up. So I was like, okay, great. I'm gonna sell a little Bitcoin, take the cash from the Bitcoin, put that toward maintaining the portfolio that I had over here, the one that's burning down, right? I'm going across town to get water to put out the fire in the burning building. I'm not going to keep my water in the building that is most likely to burn down, right? So I get my liquidity, I put out that fire, it gets me through that temporary situation, and then you move forward. Because the big problem that people run into, and this is something that people have struggled with, you might have seen this actually if you've been reading the financial news. Whenever there's a big drop in asset values, a lot of the shall we say a lot of the crisis and the biggest problems actually are related to liquidity, causing people to have to sell distressed assets, right? That's literally the number one factor. Like, in fact, most businesses that die, they don't die because they can't make a profit. They die because they don't have enough liquidity to get through the rough times. Right. So like a relationship, like it's not so much whether or not that person is good for you. Sometimes they might be great for you, but if you have a really rough patch and you can't get through the rough patches, then that one rough patch, that one bad week you had, can ruin the next 20 years. That's why I encourage you to think of your relationship also like one of your many financial assets that you're investing in, because a marriage is a legal contract, right? So just like any other asset, I would invest in things like therapy and self-development, so you can learn how to manage that asset like you manage everything else, because that's one asset that can actually deplete your wealth. Most divorced couples lose 70% of their wealth during the divorce. I don't know if y'all know that or not. So don't think about your relationship and your economics as separate things. They're deeply connected. That's why I talk about relationships a lot. In fact, we're doing something called the Black Love Weekend in a couple of weeks. If you want to join us, we got a bunch of relationship experts that are coming through, and I'll tell you all about that later. But the liquidity piece is really important. So when you have a portfolio, a lot of times, especially if you have any debt or anything like that, a crisis in value can cause what they call margin calls and things like that, where you've got to put up more cash to maintain your ownership. And the reason that's important to be able to do is because if you don't, then what'll happen is they'll make you start selling things at the worst possible time. There's a family that was over leveraged. I forgot the name of the family. It was all over the Wall Street Journal this week. And they had $20 billion in assets or something. And they got this multi-billion-dollar margin call because all their assets started to plummet in value. And the company did not have enough cash to put out the fire. They didn't have enough liquidity, enough water to put out the fire. So they had to sell all these distressed assets. And the more you sell something, the more the price is going to drop. So a lot of banks and a lot of other companies were kind of hit with that financial virus, because when big companies that own lots of assets start selling everything, then it pushes prices down even further than they were going to go automatically. So a lot of times the reason that you see this kind of cascading effect when prices start going down and they keep going down further and further and further is because as the prices drop, margin calls start getting activated. And a lot of people that have margin, they've only prepared for the best. They haven't thought about the worst. They're thinking about the upside. They haven't thought about the downside. So when the downside hits them, they're not prepared. And that causes them to have to sell things. So as you're growing and you're investing and you're making your money, always ask yourself, what happens if the value of these assets drops by 50%? Are we ready? Are we ready to put up the cash? Are we ready to get through the rough spot? Because here's the thing, if you can, then you actually, there's actually a lot of sunshine on the other side of that dark tunnel. It's for example, the 2007 crash and the Great Depression, or the 87 crash. Any crash you name in American history has literally been the greatest opportunity to make money ever, right? Literally, the crashes are the times where people that are ready do well. I told you about the pandemic. The pandemic was a huge crash globally, politically, economically, etc. China was ready. China thrived. China's power is higher now than it was before the start of the pandemic. The tech companies were ready. Tech companies' power is higher now than it ever was even before the pandemic. So the 2007 crash, there were people that started selling either because they didn't have the cash to maintain their margin calls, or they just got scared and ran away. Those people lost money, and they gave money away to the people that were prepared, the people that came in buying, guns blazing. They were buying everything that they could. Warren Buffett does this. People like Warren Buffett do this. They wait for the crisis so they can come in and become the superhero that buys your company at a 40% discount. And then they just sit and they sit on it and they hold it and they wait for the rain to stop. And next thing you know, they're sitting on a few billion extra dollars that you just handed them because either you didn't have the stomach to stand the rain, or you didn't have the capital to stand the rain. So just like that New Edition song, I love that song, and I'm not just doing it because Ronnie actually from New Edition is actually in this class. He comes to class sometimes, and I love this guy. He's a smart guy. But I love that song, "Can You Stand the Rain?" Because literally, if you think about this is the fundamental principle of life. It's true in investing and it's true in life. When you go through the tough times and you can just kind of hold on and remain focused, you always benefit on the other side. So the investors that held on during the 2007 crash made a killing when the market improved. This most recent crash, when the market crashed, if you held on and then bought more and doubled down and went harder, you made a killing when the sun came back out, right? My parents were married in 1974. They have had many, many challenging situations in their marriage that would have led a lot of people to get a divorce. A lot of men would have walked away. A lot of women would have walked away, but they held on. Now they get to celebrate 46 years of marriage. So the question at the end of the day is, and this is a good way for us to end for today, because we've been talking for over an hour and a half, is can you stand the rain? That's it. People that can stand the rain tend to do better in investing. Standing the rain means a couple things. It means, one, having the stomach to maintain to remain focused even in periods of volatility, and two, it means that if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. So that means having some cash to the side, some uncorrelated assets, some places you can go where you can get the money you need, even if you have to borrow it. Right? Even if it means borrowing against your home equity. I'm not telling you to do that, but sometimes it's necessary. Or it means selling a little crypto because you got the crypto to the side to back up your portfolio. Just being ready for when things change, because things will always change. And also the other thing too is that the dynamics that drive the stock market during any given period of time are not the same across the board. Sometimes, for example, the last year, the whole conversation was about COVID and stay-at-home plays and everything else and technology stocks. Now that's old news. Now you're going back to the cyclicals and you're going back to the companies that are going to do well when the world reopens again. And a lot of people are predicting actually that we could enter an era once Dr. Fauci finally says it's okay to take your mask off. I kind of feel like that's the guy the scared people will listen to him. Once he says, okay, life is normal now, we're good, then a lot of people predict that we're going to have an economic boom that is similar to the Roaring 20s, where everybody's been locked in for a long time and they're eager to get back out. Like, how many of you right now are eager to get back out once this is over? Like, you can't wait to go to your favorite restaurants again. You can't wait to go on vacation. Maybe you want to travel overseas. Maybe you want to go on a cruise. You just want to do something different than staying home every day. Well, millions of people feel the same way you feel. You got to pay attention to those things because that's going to drive consumer demand, which I think is going to lead to a couple things that will improve your stock prices. One, it's going to increase the expectation of future earnings of the companies that you're going to frequent and you're going to support. So as expectations of future earnings goes up, stock prices go up. But then two, you're going to probably have a realization of their earnings that is even going to be higher than the expectations. So when you have a realization that exceeds expectations, the price goes up even further. So most indicators point north when it comes to stock market investing. So this is a good time to invest. You're very, very lucky. All right. So I'm sorry I couldn't answer every single question. I answered as many as I could. And I see Tim and Deidre. I want to acknowledge Tim, Deidre, David, and Michael. I see your questions, and I think my brain is officially fried. So I hope that's okay that we bounce out of class for today. And save your question for next time, and we will definitely do that. And Deidre, I see you're asking about the event tomorrow. Will there be a recording? Yeah, you can get a recording. It's all on that page. If you go to the event tomorrow is attorney Tanya Nebo is going to talk about how to start a franchise or how to buy a franchise with your company. She's a lawyer. She's worked with a lot of families on this. You can go to theblackbusinessseries.com, THE. That's theblackbusinessseries.com. If you want to join, it's Thursday night, so feel free to do that. Theblackbusinessseries.com. And actually, I feel kind of guilty, so I'll answer Tim, David, and Michael's question because I can't sit here and look at your last three questions and not answer them. So the three last questions are: do you think industrial stocks will go up with Biden news? Asked Tim. Yes, they will. That's what we just discussed. Yeah, the industrials, the cyclicals. My God, I mean, they're going to be great. And actually, if you log in at the blackstockmarketprogram.com, go to that section on what Dr. Boyce is buying. I'll pick some cyclicals that I like and stuff like that. I've already picked some. I'll keep picking more and more each week based on what my research says. David Myers, do you have classes on real estate and wholesaling? Yes. If you go to the blackreigroup.com, Julian Gordon is our dean of real estate in the Black Business School. Julian is a real estate expert who's in his 30s. He owns about $3 or $4 million worth of property. His group in that class, they're in the process right now of buying up a big chunk of Black Baton Rouge. And so they're acquiring a lot of this land and they're doing it together as a class. So if you go to the blackreigroup.com, REI stands for Real Estate Investment Group. You might be able to still get in. I don't know if they're accepting enrollment or not, but you can go take a look. It's theblackreigroup.com, theblackreigroup.com. All right, Michael Stallworth, what is the crypto list website again? Yeah, it's drboycecrypto.com. So if you want to see a list of the crypto that I own, feel free to go to drboycecrypto.com. Okay, so next week, the Black Stock Market Program, we're going to meet at 11 a.m. Eastern time on Tuesday. So I will send you guys emails and more information all throughout the week. So you will hear from me on a regular basis. So God bless you. It was real. Thanks for hanging out. And I'll